Lord, I keep so busy praising my Jesus. Keep so busy. And it's 9 o'clock here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Time for us to present you this evening's Full and Abundant Life Radio program hosted by Dr. Claudius Davis. And without further ado, we turn you over to Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, good night and welcome.
Good night. Good night. And it's certainly a privilege to be back here tonight again to present another program entitled The Full and Abundant Life. And we certainly want to welcome all of you who just tuned in to the program, and in particular to those of you who are in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Certainly a privilege to have each of you every night here on Wednesday night, WeFM. And Kamal, I think, gave the phone numbers. Can you give us the phone number again?
Oh, yes, I can do so. To be a part of this evening's program, the number to call 457-9997. If you further feel the area code 784, and the number remains 457-9997. You can also send us a WhatsApp message or place a WhatsApp call at the same number, 457-9997, to be a part of this evening's program.
Okay, and thank you so much for that. And of course, you will give us any comments that we have in terms of from the WhatsApp messages, and for any phone calls, of course, you would let us know that.
Yes, and I think one of the things too that I must mention is that this program is also streamed on Facebook Live on WeFM's Facebook page. And well, you can give your Facebook page as well, and they can interact either or.
Okay, I did not know that, because for those who are on my Facebook page, obviously they're already there. But that's another angle that I didn't realize, that you can actually stream the, and especially for those who are in St. Vincent, but not just in St. Vincent, but wherever you are, if you're in fact following WeFM. That's certainly one other way of doing that. Also, I think this is also streamed on YouTube.
Yes.
And I sometimes keep forgetting that, but I know that that's another place you can go. But certainly we want to welcome all of you, and especially for those of you who are in St. Vincent. We certainly want for you to take opportunity to dialogue with us and to certainly interact with us. Tonight, we were talking last time about the impact of poverty on parenting as it has to do with our children. I want to continue that, but in a different stream. Tonight, I want to look more at the colonization of what I refer to as the life world by our cultural system, the humanistic values, and the maybe for a better word, put it in a biblical context, for the satanic strategies that continues to plague us, how that the humanistic satanic system has infiltrated every aspect of our way of life. So I call that the life world, because, and I'll define that as we go along to help you to understand what I'm referring to. But in essence, I'm talking about the redemptive. John refers to this as the koinonia, the redemptive family system, spiritual system that is in place, and how, because in this life world, we sort of, it designs us, it shapes us, but we also shape it as well. It's sort of an interactive process, but it is sort of, in essence, it has an impact both ways. It has an impact in shaping us, but we also play an important role in terms of shaping that environment as well. And so I really want to talk about that, because a lot of these social issues that we're facing in our world today, really, I think we have to begin to look at, how we are being shaped, what our value systems are, and not only the fact that we are being shaped, which is really reciprocal in a way, because it shapes us, but we also shape it as well. So it works together. And so out of that, you have the end product. And in a lot of ways, what we are reaping today, or what we have sort of put together, what that system has put together. And so what we have to really begin to ask ourselves is, what is it? Why are we changing, evolving as fast as we are evolving? What's happening in our society? Everything seems to be changing. And what's behind it? What is this driving force that is in essence changing us? And so I want us to begin to have some discussion about that, because diagnostically, I think we are kind of pointing fingers at different areas as to why we are where we are. But also, if you're wrong in terms of your diagnostic method, if that is incorrect, then certainly we're going to be incorrect in terms of the prescription as well. And so we have to begin to have those kinds of discussions. So we have to begin to ask ourselves in terms of the key to this sickness of what's going on in our world. How do we detoxify it? How is it fixable, or is this a completely a hopeless, helpless kind of a situation where we are in this stream, powerlessly drifting downstream, and there's nothing that we can do to reverse it, to change it? And so some of us, I think, have just resigned ourselves to whatever's going to happen. But I believe that as the children of God, that we are commanded, we are commissioned to take a very active role in terms of shaping the life world, in terms of shaping the koinonia. And when I say that, I mean in shaping the way our family works, in terms of shaping the way, in terms of our political system work, how our religious communities work, whether it be synagogues, churches, mass, whatever it is, the institutions, the financial institutions, educational institutions, the entertainment institute, all of this put together are shaping and creating an ethos, creating an environment, and our children are the ones who are being shaped ultimately. And so what we are seeing is as a result of the fruits that we have planted. The Bible clearly says, whatever you sow, that you will reap. And so that's kind of where I want us to have our discussion tonight, to really look at the larger blocks, look at the larger forces in our society that are in fact shaping us. In First John chapter 2 and verse 15, it says, do not love the world, the cosmos. Do not love the world, nor the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Again, we see here that the Bible is talking about a system, an organization that has a life of its own, that is cultivating, shaping this life world, is shaping our values, shaping our desires and our interest. And so that in turn is having an impact in terms of our self-definition, how we define ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we set our goals and our ambitions. And so as a result of that, is creating a culture that sometimes we don't like. And sometimes we may see, the level of violence that are happening in our communities, the way that we have changed in terms of how we define a marriage, for example, the idea of having the nuclear family that's evolving, that's changing. So everything around us are in fact changing. And what I want us to answer a tough question: what's behind all of this? What's driving this? Is it just technology? Is just that the fact that we become more intelligent, we're more advanced, we become more sophisticated? What is responsible? And obviously, I don't think we're going to be taking credit for the fact that our homes are falling apart. I don't think we're going to take credit for the fact that crime continued to escalate in our communities and the nastiness and the ugliness. Where do these things come from? Why is it that way? Why is it that we have, I was just this week, I was, talking to an individual, and as he was sharing his story, and he was doing it in tears, it was literally crying, and I felt, I felt hopeless. It sort of engendered that in me, that I felt, how can I help this individual? A grown person in tears, broken. And of course, his sadness was about the alienation from his own children, the alienation. And then I asked, well, where is mom? How is she doing? And he said, well, mom passed away. Well, that even makes me sadder. The fact that, he is alienated from his children, and the fact that his wife has already passed away. And as I struggled with, how can I, in an empathic way, reach out to this individual and bring some solace, some comfort to this really sad situation. And so at the end of our discussion later, I decided to Google his name. And to my surprise, he was the one who killed his wife. And this was in the presence of his children. And then I sat back and I said, it was amazing that I sat there and how I struggled to sort of, in some empathic way, reach out to this individual who is in tears. And then later I discovered the horrible situation of what he was engaged in and what had in fact happened. And so the question for me tonight, what is it about? Obviously, you have to now ask yourself the question, how are these children are going to recover, and what would their life be like when they enter into adulthood? And what kind of a intervention, what kind of a treatment that we can give to these children to explain to the fact that they stood helplessly witnessing their mother being executed by their legal part of their family, a member of their family. How do we do this? And so the question is, how do we get there? What is happening in our world? What is happening to us as a people? And then if we are able to come up with the right diagnostic and say, well, this is what went wrong. This is what is broken. And now that we know what's broken, this is how we are going to fix it. What's the solution to all of this? Is it by putting more money into the system? Will that fix it? Is it, putting more power into the system? Will that fix it? What exactly is the solution? What can we do as a people to reverse what is happening in our society? And I believe that we have to begin to ask ourselves the big question. How do we, our children are being socialized in a very toxic environment. So the question then becomes, how do we detoxify the environment, this life world that our children are being socialized in? What can we do as parents? What can we do as priests and pastors and evangelists and politicians and rulers and mothers and grandmothers? What can we do to detoxify this kind of environment so that our children can have a normal, healthy, safe environment in which to grow? How can we do this? Now, can we then refer to the Bible as a guide? Because, many are saying, and I hear this all, as a matter of fact, I just listened to a program this morning, that the argument was that the Bible is just a storybook that really has no real, we shouldn't be listening to it. And so then what's the solution? If the Bible isn't a book we should turn to, if the idea of God is not the sort of a person we should look to, and if our old model and our value system are so outdated, so that we need a better value system, what will that value system look like? And who designed that value system? Can we allow the United Nations to determine what that value system should look like? Should we allow the United States to decide that? Should we allow St. Vincent to decide that? How do we decide? I sort of put a text on one of the programs this morning, and of course I later took it down. And my text on the program: what happens if my preference is to cohabitate with my goat? And that's how I actually said, my goat. What if that's my preference? Should society then enact laws to guarantee my right to have sexual interaction with my goat or with my animal? Because that's my preference. Should society then change its system in order to? And what happens if you have enough people? Because you may say, well, it's a matter of consensus. We have to have enough people who now come to the conclusion that they want to have sexual relationship with their animal. If we have enough people to do that, then should we now enact laws to make this a reality? Is that how we are building our society? And by the way, that is the way our society is going. It's about fulfilling the preferences of certain interest group, securing their rights. But in order to do that, we are in fact changing some of our traditional values in order to create what we call the rights of certain interest groups. Is that the way? How do we decide? And the issue was about what do we determine as natural laws? And it was interesting to hear people play with that. And the question was, we're creating what we think there is natural law. There are no natural laws out there. And so if there are no natural laws, then we're free to create our own as we go. And that's a very frightening thing. So we still come back to the whole idea then. How are we going to steer our children in a direction and give them something that is tangible, that is concrete, that is fundamental, that they can have as a target where they can begin to build their life in terms of deciding what's wrong and what's right? But if we are always changing the bar to accommodate certain interest group, and so we are changing our system of values to accommodate certain interest group with certain preferences, and we glorify preferences, where are we going to be as we continue to do that? And that's what's happening in our world. And you say, well, what does that have to do with crime and violence? What does that have to do with some of the nastiness that's happening in our society? And I'm saying that some of the nastiness and what's happening in our society is because we are changing our value system. And tonight, I'm hoping that we can have some discussions about that in terms of identifying some of the areas in which we're changing our values that are having, some of the nasty consequences as a result of some of the choices that we have made. And so, we need to understand that God's dominion means the abandonment of the domination of humans being over each other. I believe that in order to have God as the dominant person, being, means then that we have to then move away from the idea of abandoning this whole domination of us dominating each. And that's what it is today. And that's a very subtle piece when you look at it. And I want us to understand something, that the Enlightenment of the 17th century, brought, is responsible for the modern Western societies, essentially. But that Enlightenment brought prosperity, but it also brought some downside to it. And part of the downside to that is the fact that it creates a multiple set of alienation that was inherently built into it. And we can, I think it was Paul Lakeland who identified 2 areas of that alienation. And I want to share them with you because I think it's important for us to understand part of what we've got from the Enlightenment that happened so far back, what has actually happened and continue to happen in our society. And one of them is that we take ourselves as autonomous individuals. And that autonomous, against the environment. It is also, we define ourselves oppositionally in the sense that we tend to use the environment and use others in order as instrument to further our cause and our dreams and our realities. And that's part of what has happened and continue to happen today. And we see it in every facet of our experience and our lifestyle, where we see ourselves as, I think it was Trump who puts it. It says, "We shall make America great." Remember that famous phrase, "We shall make America great"? Well, what does that mean, to make America great? It means that in order for that to happen, you have to climb on the backs of other countries to make that a reality. And that's what's happening around the globe. That's what's happening in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians. That's what's happening. The strong gets stronger and the weak gets weaker, and the strong dominates the weak. And we see it in every aspect of our society. But when you move it from the global and you bring it home a little closer, you see it even in our own homes, where men gets to the point where they feel that they can dominate everybody under their roof, to the point where domestic violence, and that's the situation that I tried to share with you a little bit a while ago without getting into real details, where, in this family system, that the one that was perceived to be the weaker lost her life, and the children stood, well, not they actually, one of the child actually got involved to help the mom to escalate herself, but it was too late when that happened. And so we see this domination where the big overruns the little. We see it even in politics. One government will say, I have a good friend from Antigua, and he has this talks about the birds in the days of the birds, that one of the slogan was, "You don't vote for me, turn your pot down, because when I get in power, you won't have a job." And we see this throughout the Caribbean. We see it everywhere. That one political party will once they get into power, they will get rid of everybody else. And all of the people that they'll be feeding are the people who've actually vote for them to be in office. And what happened to the others? They starve. And so we see this. We see it in our country. We see it globally among big nations. but we also see it in our homes. And I have to say that we also see it in our local churches, that those who are more affluent tend to have more privileges, even within the church. It's like God have a preference. And his preference tend to go towards those who are more privileged. And sometimes it seems like God's preference even go to those who are of lighter complexion. Now, I don't want you to misquote me. I'm just saying sometimes it looks this way. So you find that the minorities would always be the minority. And there are those who are at the top who consider themselves. And I'm saying that that's what we got from the Enlightenment. That's what it brought. It brought a sense of alienation that is still rippling in the 21st century, in our homes, in our local churches, in our governments, where one party alienates itself and to oppress those who are beneath them, and they reap from the top. This is happening. And I'm saying that this is not just limited to a particular group of people. It is seen to be a global illness that is happening. And my question to us tonight is, how can we slow this process down? How can we come back and say, look, we are all brothers and sisters? How can we recognize and value each other and begin to celebrate our individuality without trampling on the rights of others? And sometimes the trampling of others get real nasty, where we are willing to pick up guns and destroy. And I think that's what we're seeing displayed with between Israel and the Palestine. That's what we see between Russia and the Ukraine. That's what we saw in South Africa. What happened there for years? That's what we saw when Africans were brought to this world in order to work in the cane fields and the cotton fields, and how they didn't have rights and they were enslaved. We saw that. But here's what we have to understand, though, that God was watching all of this. And he knew that we were all equal. We were all children. And even to this day in the 21st century, not much have changed. The situation still exists. The rich gets richer, but they do it by climbing on the backs of others. And the interesting thing is that those who are at the bottom work the longest hours, they work harder, but they get less. And the people who do work less, they seem to be reaping everything from the top. So that's part of this whole process of alienation. And this has created revolutions. It has created chaos. It has created all kinds of mayhem throughout the ages and continue to do the same. And today we're still experiencing some of these same things. So that's one of the process of the alienation. But secondly, according to what Lakeland says, and that's why I wanted to share this with us, and I want to welcome all of you who are on the Facebook page tonight. It's certainly a privilege to have all of you here with us, but feel free to interact with us and certainly share your thoughts and ideas. Kamal is certainly monitoring over there. But secondly, in the second place, we place ourselves in competition with each other, where we then tend to compete to the point where we are all trying to be at the top. And it seems like the more we have, the better it is. It seems like we've accomplished our task, the more that we have. And so this idea of this capitalist spirit of actually accumulation of things, and therefore success is measured by how much you have achieved. And so we really don't care how we achieve it. What we do care is the amount that we have. And so in order to do that, we're willing to do everything. And if it means bending our values, changing our values, but we tend to want to do that. So we are competing with each other. We are always selling ourselves because we want something. We trade ourselves. And we see this, especially within our poor communities, where our young women are willing to trade sex in order to have an iPhone, trade sex in order to have their rent paid, some women even trade that in order to feed their children. And we see this, especially in the small islands. You know stories about this, where politicians use their office to exploit young girls, to exploit poor families, even to the point of getting their vote. We see this, but it is happening. But you know what? It has become a way of life. And they say, well, they do it, but you don't do it. So what is it if it doesn't make any difference? Let me get mine. And if I can get mine, that's good enough. That's the society that we live in. Dog eats dog, eat dog. And I'm saying to us that level of sickness is something we have to address, and we have to begin to move forward and to change that situation, because in the end of the day, we are all children, and we're on this planet, and we have to find a way to begin to be our brother's keeper and to do unto others as you would have them do to you. And so we have to say enough of this nastiness, and we have to begin to move forward and to understand how dangerous this system is. So the system, I think, has deprived us of our essential humanity. It has robbed us of that. And so it's put us in a place where we're either going to be at the bottom or we're going to be at the top, or we're fighting to get to the top. And it doesn't matter how it is. But in order to do that, we are always changing who we are as a people. We put people against each other. We see it. I mean, in some small countries, you see it. Even in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you see it. Where the NDP is over here and the ULP is over here, and there's always this constant battle going. But the constant battle have severe consequences. Severe consequences in terms of even putting food on your table. And so what our children have to do, they have to be smart enough to figure out who can put food on the table. That's the person who's going to get my vote. Who can get me a job? That's the person. It doesn't matter what the value systems are. And so we tend to duplicate the nastiness again. We see it in the United States. Everywhere. It is the way it is. We have this slogan now. It's about who you know, basically. If you happen to know the right person, then you're in good places. We know this. So if you have that mentality, if that's the scheme of the day, then what's going to happen? Election means nothing, because election is not about the choice of the people. Election is about how can I get a good job? How can I maintain my job? It's not about what's right anymore. And we see it all over the world. Globally, that's the way it operates. Now, the question that we have to ask, is this the way that God designed and engineered for us to interact with each other? I don't think it is. And I'm not just speaking here in terms of, don't think I'm thinking about, one party versus the other, because, if the other party gets in, they're going to fire all the people, from the other people. That's how it works. It works across the board. I'm saying that we've got to begin to change something. How are we going to do business to maintain our humanity as God engineered and designed us to be, to have a sense of pride and to respect each other, irrespective of our political ideology? We are still part of this planet, and we're still God's children, and we have to learn. At the end of the day, yes, we can have differences, but we have to live as brothers and sisters and care for each other as brothers and sisters. Now, that's the way it is. But politics doesn't teach us that. The economic system doesn't teach us that. Our educational system doesn't teach us that. It teaches just the opposite. It teaches you how to get around and how to get above and do whatever you can in order to make things happen. And I'm saying to us that continues. That's what's fostering a lot of the nastiness and the ugliness that is happening in our society. And of course, I can throw a lot of Bible verse out here, but it doesn't matter, because we just throw these Bible verses out, but it means nothing at the end of the day. Okay, we can talk about loving each other, but if we don't put things in place to ensure that that will happen, we will never be able to do that, because there are higher powers, the economic agenda, greed, and selfishness. If those are the foundational building block of our value system, then what happens? Money and power becomes the driving force. How we define ourselves, how we interact with each other, it would always be based on money and power, because we all want money and we all want to have power, but some of us have already concluded that I can have neither. I can't have power and I can't have money, so I have to find a criminal way to at least to get a little of it. Or I may have to turn to drugs to numb out the fact that I am a nobody. I'm a second-class citizen. I'll never be like these people up here. I'll never be able to have the economic freedom like these people up here, because they were born into it. And they're privileged people, but I will never be that way. And so what are my choices? I may turn to prostitution. I may turn to the quickest way to get some money, which is drug addiction, selling drugs, peddling drugs. Or I may choose the path of suicide and self-destruct. Or I may develop other internal psychological illnesses that cripples me for life. And it goes on, and I duplicate that. And that's what Lewis talks about when he talks about the culture of poverty. It's not about you don't have money. It's about the way of life that you have adjusted yourself to, the sense of hopelessness that now become your reality. And so your dependency and your mechanism, your coping mechanism might be to sell drugs. It might be to sell your body. It might be to engage in other criminal activities. And I see people like this all the time. They don't mind. They don't mind spending 2 years, 3 years in jail, because when they come right back out, they know that the only choice that they have is to go and sell the drugs so they can drive a Mercedes-Benz or BMW, get some of the most beautiful young girls, and have good sex and so on. And so that's their reality. And they are willing to pay the price for that. And that price might be taking the life of another human being in order to acquire their financial resources so they can have the illusion of power and the illusion of money. And people do that all the time. A lot of our young people, why do you think our young people are getting in gangs, packing guns, and killing? Because gun is a symbol of power. And guns can afford them some of the material things that they cannot have out of their own natural brain, their own natural creative powers. So the only choice that they have is to take those other shortcuts. And even though they know that their wealth wouldn't last long, they may have to spend some time in jail, they don't mind. Because having the sexiest girl, driving a Mercedes-Benz, have a gun in your pocket, that euphoric aspect of it, that's okay. Because they know they could never get to the top. So they've resigned themselves to a way of life that ultimately are going to be destructive. They're either going to wind up in the cemetery or they wind up incarcerated, or something bad is going to happen. But they're willing to forego that. And that's the delusion of wealth and power, that many of our young people have become addicted with this whole notion of money and power. And because that's what we see from the people who are at the top, don't it? All the people with the yachts and they build big houses, and it's money and power. Money speaks. And even some of our politicians demonstrate that by the way of life. They get into power, and all of a sudden what happens? They become rich. They become powerful. A lot of our preachers, poor men, get into the pulpit. After a while, they become powerful, become rich and affluent. What happened? People begin to learn that where it's at It's where the money is, and it's about power that brings stardust, and that makes you somebody in the world. And I'm willing to take the gamble. That's why the lottery. That's why people play the lottery. They want their ship to come in. There's a slogan that says, you know, $1 in a dream. $1 in a dream. That's the whole idea of what this capitalist idea of money and power has done to us. It destroy our homes, destroying our local churches, destroying every aspect of our society. Is rippling with this whole notion of power and money that I think that are destroying many of our young people. So I certainly want to just make sure that I haven't had any comments that I'm overlooking here. How do I do this? That's crazy. I can't see some of these. Stephanie says, man has moved away from God, and that's why the world is having so much trouble. Put God back in the front, and things will let me see more, and things will work better. And that is certainly true. And that's what that is what I want us to talk about. That's what I've been talking about. But we need the courage, though, to push back. I don't believe that we can maintain a passive stance in the world in which we live, because the moment you assume the passive stance, it means you're flowing with the current. It means that you want a free ride, and there's always a consequence for a free ride, because you're going to find yourself way down at the end of the stream. But you have to be able to go upstream, and that takes a lot of resistance. And I think that might be what Jesus was implying when he said, look, if you're going to come after me, I want you to take up your cross, and I want you to follow me. Because what he was simply saying is this journey is going to be, there's a gentleman who actually, there's a song about grace, and he was telling a story about what one black woman was showing how intelligent she was, and she says, son, there's a reason if the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. And the whole point behind of this is that there's going to be some resistance in life. That if you want to go in the way that God engineered you to go, there's going to be some resistance. But God has given us the strength to be able to climb the mountain. But too many of us want the free ride, and we sail. And that's why I think politicians take advantage of us, because we're hoping when we put them in office, they will somehow look out for us personally. Not that they will fix our roads, not that they're going to give us better health care, not that they're going to be able to create better systems, but no, they're going to give us money in our pockets. They're going to do individual things behind the scene. And so we're willing to do that. And so we sell our souls. And I believe that is just as much of a sin as if you had taken another man's wife. You see, we have a way of defining what sin is, but we forget some of these basic things that we do that cuts and undermine our identity, our sense of humanity, that takes that away from us, our right to be able to stand up and be who we are and be respected. That, my friend, when you sell that, you're like an Esau. And there are too many Jacobs in our world who are willing to gamble and to finesse. And ultimately, because we are lazy, we are willing to allow them to feed us. And so we become the Esau's of the world, and they become the Jacobs of the world. They get our birthrights, and they pass on our birthright to their children and make their children affluent with power and status and money at our expense. And sometimes people say, Claudius, you get too excited. But yes, I do. I do. When we choose the path of an Esau and allow the Jacobs of the world to rob us of our birthright, and we sit back and watch their children, their families living on our birthright, That gets me upset. Yes, I need to calm down. But when I think about that, it bothers me. How can we resign ourselves to such victimization? We see it in the churches, preachers taking advantage of an opportunity that God's people have given to them, and they turn it into a place for their power, a place for their money. Politician is doing it. When I say politician, I mean all politicians, not just one side. All of them do that. Okay. We as a people have to be able to say, look, I am tired of being an Esau. I want to be a Jacob. And I'm going to be able. But you know, if you think about these two boys, who worked the hardest? Who cultivated the land? It was Esau. Even the porridge that Jacob made, it was what Esau had provided. But yet, who was hungry? It was Esau who was hungry. And it was Esau who had done all the work, but he was hungry. And Jacob was there waiting for him. And Jacob took his own material, creating this nice meal. And Jacob said to him, look, bro, if you want this, why don't I give you this? And you give me your birthright. Jacob gave Esau what he had worked for and took away his birthright. I think we need to do the analysis and ask yourself, have I assumed the role of an Esau? Too lazy to cultivate my own resources? Am I too lazy for that? Am I too lazy for that? Why is that? What's going on? So I think you should make a tough decision tonight. Am I an Esau? And am I going to settle for an Esau? And am I going to trade out to the Jacob? Because there are many Jacobs in our world. Many Jacobs. We have too many Jacobs in our pulpits. Too many Jacobs in our place of power. But where does the Jacob? Jacob doesn't plant anything. Jacob doesn't go to the field. He stays at home. It is the Esau that goes out and do the work. It is Esau that brings home the animal. It is Esau that brings home the provision. And Jacob takes it all, makes a nice soup, and then give it to Esau. And then Esau decide that he's going to... Jacob, you see, in the Jacobs of the world always have a plan, don't they? They're always thinking. And they're always thinking how to take your resources. And not just to take it, to have you give it to them. And that's what politicians do. That's what... And not all politicians do that. Not all religious leaders do that. There are still some honest people out there. But even in our homes, sometimes, marriages are nothing more than a contract. And the contract is that, you know, if you do this and this and this, then I will get this and this and this. And then in that contract, you know, you have a contract with a lady who's 119 pounds. And then 20 years later, she becomes 165 pounds, 180 pounds. And then you say, well, that's not in the contract. The contract was 119 pounds. Now you broke the contract. So now I got to go out and find me 119 pounds. So now you got to go. See, that's how we think. And I'm saying that there is something inherently wrong with the way we choose to identify ourselves and the way we choose to live. You know, we haven't gotten any responses on our phone lines and so on and so on. But I'm curious as to, you know, what are you folks thinking about all of this? You know, how do you think about this colonization in terms of our life world, the redemptive koinonia, a place where there's supposed to be love and gentleness and kindness, where we have all these nastiness cultivating ourselves. How do we respond to all of this?
We have a question.
Go ahead.
All right. Question just in. Let me read it. Question: as we all say that no money, no love, is it true that what is wrong with playing a lotto game? And what about you if you win and you decide to give the church a donation? What is wrong with that?
What is wrong with it? Hey, you know what? You give the church a donation to wash your sins away. Is that what it is? To wash your guilt away? You know, let's look at the larger picture. The larger picture is that we have been socialized to feel that the way to have happiness, the way to have a sense of success, is to have two things: power and money. And for those of us who are at the bottom of the ladder, are convinced that the quickest way to get that might be through the lottery, because there's no other way you can get it, or to steal. Because a lot of people steal, you know that, right? A lot of robberies and stuff like that happens. That's why why do you think a lot of our young people are packing guns? What does a gun do for a young man? And sometimes a young man who probably, can't, maintain a job, and so on. What do you think a gun in your pocket does for a young man in the street? Because the gun is a symbol of power. Just like money is a symbol of power. So the dream of the lottery really is about the same headset. Because you look at, in your community, you look at those who have all of the affluence. If you look at all the politicians that are in power, look at all the politicians who are in power. Don't you see they live a little better? It's not that their salary, they give in salary sometimes a little higher, but their life, the privilege and the power that they have. So people who are at the low come to conclude that, I have the will, I want to have all of those things, but it must be I don't have the brain. And so if I don't have the brain, it means I'm a nobody. And once you entertain that you have the will, but you will never get there, then you have to conclude that you don't have the brain. And if you don't have the brain, you have to develop a way. And a way to do that might be the quickest way, might be to get involved in selling drugs. Because you can get rich real fast selling drugs. But you're willing to gamble that you're either going to wind up dead or you're going to wind up in jail. Or you can choose to choose the addictive path, where you get involved in drugs and numb yourself. And that's what worries me about this marijuana, legalizing marijuana for medication. Half the people don't use it for well, I see them. I work every day. I'm a drug counselor and I work in that community. So I see it every day, right? And I'm telling you, a lot of these people who have the script, they have it in order to further their addiction. And it's just as addictive. And it destroys their lives. And I know for a fact, because I work in that community every day. I'm a New York State drug counselor. I do that every day. I work in a whole different headset, but I interact every day where I work with that population of people. And I'm telling you that most of these people that I work with that do have the medication license or whatever it takes to get it, they're one step out of a drug rehab. Because if you can't get the illegal drug, then marijuana and alcohol is the next best thing. So if you double up the alcohol and you have a prescription for the marijuana, you're still on the same path. And then if you can trick a psychiatrist into put another bit in there, legal drug in that, something that can get you high, then you got your marijuana prescription, you have alcohol, and then you have one that the psychiatrist is giving you. Let me tell you something. Then you stay in your mother's basement, smoke all day, and then you get a gun in your pocket, and then when you are high, you go out in the boldness of the day and start shooting people down. And sometimes you shouldn't be doing because you're high. As a matter of fact, the gentleman I was speaking to this week that was telling me when he was, stabbing his wife, killed his wife, and he said, I don't even remember. He doesn't even remember what happened. No clue what happened. Okay. And because he was high. I mean, that's the excuse. Everybody seems to use the excuse when they've committed a crime. There are two excuses. They're either mentally disturbed or they were high. You know, it's amazing how it is that happened. But the point is, and then the question that the person is asking is whether or not giving some of the money to the church. Yes, the church would welcome it if the church is of that same, the preacher or whoever the leader is, where money and power comes. They don't matter. It doesn't matter to them how they get the money, because money is power. And so they will welcome you. But is that the way that God designed? Is that the pattern? That's the real question. And how can we reverse this process? You know, you can't be speaking out of one side of your mouth and be doing something else on the other side of it, right? You've got to play. One of the things that I keep saying is that you have to be able to know your position, and you have to play your position. And your position is orchestrated by God himself. He said that he engineered us for a purpose. And that purpose must be played out in all of our interaction with each other, which means we have to respect, we have to honor, we have to forgive, we have to do all of those things and help the other person, to lift the other person up. But what are we in this situation of that brings about alienation? Is about power and money. And in order to do that, you climb on the backs of others in order to get to the top. And that's what's happening in our society. Preachers are doing it. Politicians are doing it. Just about everybody is taking advantage of somebody. The question is, how long are you going to remain as an Esau and cultivate an Esau mentality to where you're going to sell your birthright? Or are you going to be a Jacob? Right? Which are you going to be? Someone is saying, well, they both are just no. But remember, Jacob, as a matter of fact, if you look very closely at the antagonism that's going on right now between Israel and the Palestinians, if you look at the root of that basically is coming from the Jacob group and the Esau group, or if you want to say the Ishmael group. But I want to see it from the Jews section represent the Jacob group, and the Esau group, that's the Palestinians. But I want to say something to you. They both have the same father. You see this? You see the catch here? Follow me on this. They both have the same father, come from the same family. One have the oil, and the other one have the Jacob mentality, where they're able to caress the rest of the world, caress the United States. So now the United States is willing to go to war for them and to dump money there so they can destroy the other group of people. And that's all under the guise of morality. It's all under the guise of democracy. Okay. And that's a frightening thing. But that's where we have to begin to see as a people. When we talk about God and Christianity, it has to be played out in our politics, in our everyday life. You cannot separate them out, because God wants us to love each other and to be kind and honest to each other. And we have to begin to do that. So don't talk about you can go to church and you can't, no. Because your Christianity, James says, true religion is to visit the fatherless. He was saying those who are disenfranchised, the disadvantaged, the oppressed, the cast away. That's where the religion needs to go and embrace and nurture those people. And that's what it is. So you can't be on this whole notion of money. Let money define you. Let power define you. It is destructive. It is corrosive. And it creates envy and greed and covetousness and all the nastiness that is happening in our society, in our homes, because we have been capitalized colonized by greed, money, and selfishness and power. And that is the corrosive element that is destroying the soul. And let me tell you, the disease of the soul, as Dr. Cornel West once said, the disease of the soul can never be fixed with money. It's like the disease of alcoholism. There must be a turning of the soul in order for the healing process to begin. And I believe that Jesus has given us the answer. And John says, behold the Lamb of God that takes it away the sins of the world. And Jesus said on the cross, Telestai, it is finished, talking about the salvation that can unite us all together so that we can work as a family and enjoy each other despite our differences, and to honor each other and learn to live together as brothers and sisters. Now, that is what New Testament Christianity is about. And that is what we need to be about. And so when we start doing analysis about drug and crime and violence and murder, let's go back and step and see where the seeds have been planted. And there's some we need to uproot, and we need to plant new seeds down. And once we start doing that, but that's a long-term process. That's not a quick fix. Because it may take us a 2 or 3 generations to correct this business. If we on this planet, Jesus may come before that. But if we're going to be here, we are here for the long term. And we have to invest for the long term if we're going to be able to change the trajectory of where we are heading. And it means we need all hands on deck. And we must work together as a people in order to say enough is enough. And stop taking a free ride. Take some responsibility and make a difference in your life. It may cost you something, cost Jesus his life. And Jesus said, if you follow me, it's not going to be all rosy. You may even die for that. But your treasures will be in heaven. And I believe that that's the best place for us to start investing if we're going to change this world, change our homes, so our homes can be a safe place where our children can have a healthy and nurturing environment in which to grow, so that they can live out what God has engineered them to be great, so they can say, oh, how sweet it is to be a child of God, how wonderful it is to be a child of God. And I know who I am. I know what God can do for me. I'm going to allow him to colonize my life so that I can be a productive citizen in my country, in my neighborhood, and I can make a difference with my life. And that's what it is. Simple, but I believe it's going to take some redoing of how we do what we do in terms of our educational programs, both in the local churches and in our regular secular systems. If we can do that, take those things back, I believe that we can certainly make a difference. So it's been wonderful tonight, and I hope that I've said some things that are sort of not too complicated, but simply enough for us to understand that we can make a difference with our lives. And ultimately, that's all we can do. And let us take the responsibility individually to begin to make our contribution in reversing the process. And I want to leave this with you tonight. Ask yourself the tough question. Am I an Esau mentality, or am I a Jacob mentality? And it does make a difference tonight. God bless. See you all next Wednesday night, same time, same place. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in, for Linda for being here tonight, for Keita for being here, Stephanie, Nervis, Mattis, Hyacinth, all of you, Myers. It's so great to have all of you here tonight. I hope I haven't overlooked anyone. God bless. And Kamal, it's back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Davis. And you were listening to the Full and Abundant Life radio program hosted by Dr. Claudius Davis, This program comes your way each and every Wednesday from 9 until 10. God's willing to join them again next Wednesday evening for another Full and Abundant Life radio program right here on We FM. We've got 5 minutes after the 10 o'clock hour, and it's pretty much time also for me to bid you goodbye